Governor Martin O'Malley, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thank you for being here. Man, talking about my generation, huh? I want to thank all of you for coming out today. I want you to chant with me. Win means jobs. 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 That felt good. Look, I want to thank you all for coming out. I really do. I want to thank you for coming to Annapolis. I want to thank you for having your voice heard. And I want to thank you for pushing all of us to do what's right, not just for the next election, but for the next generation. And that's the way we need to think. There's a guy named Paul Hawken, great writer and a friend of mine, and he said once, when I'm asked if I'm pessimistic or optimistic about the future, my answer is always the same. If you look at the science about what is happening on Earth and you aren't pessimistic, then you don't understand the data. But if you meet the people who are working to restore this Earth and the lives of the poor, and you aren't optimistic, then you haven't got a pulse. So I'm optimistic, and I'm optimistic because of all of you. Recently, I was at our family's favorite Annapolis restaurant, Chevy's, my 9-year-old's restaurant of choice, and a young man of your generation was waiting on us, and very courteously, and after taking our order, said, hey, I just want to thank you for what you're doing on wind and what you're doing for our generation. And that's the most important. And the most important work I've been able to do here in my short time serving all of you really is for you. It is for the next generation, as my parents worked for my generation. We're here because we understand that there's a connection between what we do and what we fail to do in one generation and the sort of life that'll be enjoyed by the next. I mean, that's the greatest privilege of being an American citizen. It's that privilege of being able to freely make the right choices, not just for your generation, but for the next. And all of you understand that as well. You're here because you understand the connection between fewer fossil fuels burned in our air, and therefore fewer moms and dads suffering from lung disease and fewer children suffering from asthma. You're here because you understand the connection between offshore wind and reversing climate change, and you understand that each of us has to do our part. And with your help, we're going to put 1,300 people to work with a new renewable energy source. And that is offshore wind. God has put it off of our shore. What we have to make the choice to do is to harness it. There are very few states that are located along the eastern coast of our country, that are along this Atlantic seaboard. If we don't do it, who else will do it? We have to be wide awake enough to see the strengths that we have, the assets that we have, and make the most of them. And by the way, maintaining that offshore wind will also create 480 jobs in its maintenance. With your help, we're going to plant that buoy off our coast. It won't happen overnight, but we can make it happen. Other countries have figured out how to harness offshore wind, and the beauty is, once you make the investment, once you make the choice, once you become committed, nature keeps giving you the resource for free. So look, there's a couple of things, a couple of facts, if you choose to believe them, and facts are stubborn things. There's a couple of facts that make offshore wind not only the right thing to do for the next generation, not only the right thing to do in terms of doing our part to combat climate change and sea level rise. By the way, we're the state that is third most susceptible to sea level rise, and if you don't believe me, take a trip down to Blackwater and some of the lower lying areas of the eastern shore and talk to the people that work there day in and day out, can tell you where the water was and where the water is now. But there's a couple of facts that make this the right bet just from an economic standpoint. That is to say, what is the most cost-effective thing for us to do? And here are the two. Look, if you believe 99% of all the scientists who say that climate change is real and sea level change is, because of it, is real, then this is a good bet. Also, if you believe that the price of fossil fuels over the long term, that is to say, over 30 to 35 years, will go up and not down, then this is a good bet. Why? Because you can lock in a hedge, and that hedge will lock in a tranche, a piece of offshore wind in Maryland's renewable energy supply that will be a hedge against what will inevitably be rising costs of fossil fuel, rising costs of coal, rising costs of natural gas, rising costs of oil. There's one fixed cost that we are absolutely sure of right now. Well, there's a couple of them. The sun doesn't have a cost. It keeps coming through. Maybe a little hotter than we'd like it to. But offshore wind is an ongoing renewable energy source if we choose to harvest it. So look, we have put in a bill to the General Assembly. Nobody will incur any cost because Maryland chooses to go after this for the next 5 years, possibly the next 6, possibly the next 7. These things don't get built overnight. But we have to make the choice to move forward. We are that state, and always have been, that state around which other states rally in times of challenge, in times of adversity. The great natural resource we have is one another, and it's called leadership. If we lead, if we join forces, we can get there. Thank you all for coming out and supporting offshore wind.